Assalamu alaikum. Wow. It's an honor to be with you today. This is my first MAS-ICNA Convention, and I'm completely honored and thrilled to be able to join you on this occasion. I'm looking out at the audience, and you seem to be pretty filled up. I was just listening to Sheikh Omar Suleiman talk, and he spoke a lot about issues that are very dear to my heart and really represent a lot of the work that we do, especially as it relates to women and how we participate in our communities. I've been asked to talk about Muhammad, the universal reformer for social justice. And as the founder of a Muslim women's human rights organization, our aim is to seek knowledge in order to inform the ways that we go out into the world and do work that we call activism around social justice and human rights issues. So, okay. There we go. Thank you. So, of course, when we try to gain authentic knowledge about our tradition, necessarily we seek out the teachings and the practice of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how he acted, how he spoke, how he was in the world, and how were the people around him during that time. So I think that we all have a general sense of how Islam speaks to social justice issues, and that the Prophet Muhammad is our ultimate example. But I'd like to share with you a few examples of how we try to root our work in our social justice work. Of course, the word is activism, but I think that it's just living our lives as viable Muslims in our societies, in the context where we are. So one of the things that we do is try to, of course, respond almost on a crisis basis, because, as you all know, we are in a time when we have many challenges before us. But embedded in those challenges are incredible opportunities for us to grow and be viable contributors to the societies that we belong. And so it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to stand in the face of all of the things that are coming our way. But I think also that we have a responsibility, and that the world really needs to hear Muslims' voices on these issues, and not only our voices, but how we respond to each and every one of these issues. And also that these issues means that they are not just issues related to the Muslim community, but our issues as they relate to social rights, social justice rights, and human rights actually has to do with everybody's rights, whether they are Muslim or not. So that is a very big part of the message that we try to carry, following the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We also know that often when we are under siege, our first reaction is to defend ourselves. And in that process, we often resort to a kind of strident resistance. But I think that what we often overlook is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also was able to be compassionate as he worked for social justice. So I'm learning as I grow older, in this work, that often while we seek justice, it becomes really very difficult to establish justice in the midst of war and refugee situations for people who are living those realities. So during the early 90s, when we founded my organization, Women in Islam, in response to the rape atrocities that were happening and the genocide in Bosnia, we were calling for justice, and that's what we wanted for the people. And of course, the Bosnians themselves wanted that. So there were major coalitions that came into being around this issue. So what happened is that at some point, the Bosnian people themselves became weary of war, shot at every day, seeing their families, their children absolutely devastated by war. You must be familiar with the Srebrenica massacre. I mean, these are horrendous realities that people have to live. And at some point, people really do get tired of war. So there was something called the Dayton Accords that was supposed to bring peace to the Bosnians. And of course, they're still working out the acquisition of how to get peace and justice in their society. But the people themselves said, we want no more war. So part of the teaching of Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, one of the scholars that I respect very highly, has taught me that it may be a time when we have to work for peace in order to establish justice. That it's very difficult to establish justice when drones are being dropped on people's heads, when bombs are obliterating their bodies, when there's no water or food, famine. It's very, very difficult to stand for justice when you really need a place to just breathe and be. So I'm learning that lesson, and I want to share that with you because I think that we're at a time, because of the onslaught of atrocities that are happening in the world today, we have to bring along with us our passion for struggling and fighting for justice. We also have to remember that we are a humane people, that we are a merciful people, and that we are a compassionate people, and that by no means diminishes our desire and our commitment to establish justice in our world. And I think, again, that we draw on the Prophet Muhammad's example, peace be upon him, of how he was the ultimate arbiter for peace and justice in the world, not just for Muslims, but for other people as well. So that message I wanted to share with you. I think that another thing that happens in our community, certainly the community of activists, often because we are driven to respond to the day-to-day reportage in the news, in the media, and social media, that somehow we need to respond to every Twitter tweet, every Facebook post, that somehow we feel compelled to respond to that. And not only respond to it, but respond to it in a way that equals the harshness of the attack. And again, I'm suggesting that we may want to step back a moment and think about how would the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, address these issues in our time, in the age of social media, the internet, and so forth. So young people out here, I think that this is going to be your challenge to figure out how you want to certainly be active and proud of who you are and stand for what is right on either side, whether it's for Muslims or people who are not Muslim, because that's also our mandate, not just to care for ourselves, but to care for the people around us. And you have many examples of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to teach us these lessons. So I think that education, and by education I mean knowledge, authentic knowledge about our religion, what it teaches us, how to talk, when not to talk, and how to join forces, how to join hands with other people who are like-minded, that we don't just have to work within our own faith communities. No, but quite the opposite. Much of the support that comes our way actually comes from people who are not members of our faith community, but they are passionate about human rights and social justice. And again, I think that the Prophet Muhammad's example teaches us that. I also want to talk very briefly about the women around the Prophet Muhammad and how they were active in all aspects, all facets of the society, including fighting wars. This is a time when we need all hands on deck to be openly visible Muslims, doing what you do as professionals or otherwise, but to be actively involved in bringing about change, positive change in the society. So, of course, we have our children to raise and our great-grandchildren to raise, but in addition to that, we're at a time when we have to call on ourselves as women to go that extra mile. And one friend told me that this was a time when women had to hold up the flag in many instances until the men could get there. So we're in that time now, inshallah. And our young people also, I think that part of the message that I want to share with you is the women's involvement in how our communities are developing and evolving. And of course, I'm going to mention what Sheikh Suleiman mentioned about how women are treated in our sacred spaces in the mosque. And I'm one who's of the opinion that this is a very important, critical space for Muslims, and especially Muslim women, to engage and be not only welcomed, but sought after for their knowledge, for their expertise, for their wisdom to move the community forward, inshallah. So we have to, again, take the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, remembering that it was an all-inclusive mosque that he had, that there were no walls or barriers between him and the women, that women had access to the mosque, they had access to him. And so when we have conferences with knowledgeable people at our disposals, I would ask also that the men become aware that they need to make space for women to also engage with the knowledgeable people to address their concerns and their needs. Because often the brothers, out of their love for the scholars, they descend upon them the minute that they leave the stage, and the women don't have a chance to engage. So it should be part of our programming to make that commitment that we're going to have that programmed into the schedule, that the women would have an opportunity to engage with the people of knowledge, because after all, they are the first school. So they are the ones who are raising the families, raising the nation, and I think that they must have the tools and the wherewithal to do the job that they're called on to do. Now, in the workplace also, we have women who are doing all kinds of work and skilled in so many areas. And the community loses when we don't engage women and use their expertise for the betterment and development and growth of our communities. And again, all we have to do is look at the example of our Prophet Muhammad, and you see all of the hadith about how the women were around the Prophet Muhammad, the Sahabiyat. They were literally doing everything. And no one told them to go home, that this was not their place, that they needed to stay indoors. No, they were active members of the society, contributing mightily to the protection and the growth and development of the society. So again, these are not new ideas that are coming from the West or from some other domain. These are part of our heritage and part of our history. And if we don't know that history, then it becomes our responsibility to go out and seek that knowledge and bring it back and then live by those examples. Now, we know that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is our ultimate model, and so that becomes our first reference. And so that means that we cannot cherry pick the hadith that we want to practice and discard the ones that we don't like. It means that we have to prioritize Islamic principles over cultural practices. That was the way of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Also, this issue of the divide between races, ethnic groups, language, we need to get rid of this fairly quickly because it's destroying us from the inside. Yeah. And nobody benefits from this, who love us, People who do not wish us well are very happy when we are destroying each other, when we are killing each other, when we are abusing each other. And it doesn't serve us well at all. And our children also will not be able to stand with us in the long run because they don't want that either. So it's time for us to circle the wagons, to reach out and love each other. This is a beautiful religion, and we need to like each other and love each other. And in that coming together, when we talk about unity, we're not talking about uniformity, but acknowledging each other as sisters and brothers and truly caring for them. So, there are so many examples that we have in the life and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. And I know that this community is well-versed in some of those teachings. But we have to make sure that our children have access to this knowledge also. And again, I think that they have to be socialized in the mosque, and women have to be at the center of that socialization and those teachings, inshallah. So the ball, I really think, is in our court as a community. We have so much to offer to the world. We have been selfish in so many ways by keeping this beautiful religion to ourselves when the world is literally crying around us. So we need to get out in the world, let our little light shine, and share with the people. And everything doesn't have to be labeled Muslim or Islam. Go and join anyone who's doing good work. But I also encourage you to support those organizations in your communities that are doing the work. And just because they're doing the work does not absolve you from supporting them in doing that work. So that becomes your responsibility, becomes our responsibility, inshallah. So I hope we will do that. I thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.